My name is Karen Nossardi, and I'm Director of Training at the EMDR Education and Training Center. And a question I get from a lot of new EMDR therapists is how to organize this work in terms of files and folders. And I think it's a really great question because of the many things you have to learn to be a successful and competent EMDR therapist is organization. And so I just want to share what I do as one possible option. Everyone has to kind of make this work for them. But I've gone through many iterations of how I organize my client work throughout the years, and this is what I currently land on. So I have on my computer kind of a folder that has all of my client folders on it, which I'm not going to share because that has everyone's name on it. But I've created a sample folder right here that is my Jane Doe folder. So again, if I went here, this is where I have up top here all of my current clients. If I clicked on that, you'll see a bunch of folks' folders. But if we just look on my desktop at the Jane Doe folder, we'll pretend like this is my client. When I open up her folder, this is how I have her and pretty much everyone organized. So I'll just start at the top and explain there's kind of a method to this madness. And just as a first pass, I only want open down here the things I'm going to use on a regular basis with the client. Everything else is going to get stored in folders, subfolders under Jane Doe. So right here, therapy docs are the things that you kind of deal with at the beginning of the work and then most often don't look at again. So informed consent, good faith notice, if you have like a release of information, or any other forms that you use in your practice that are kind of perfunctory at the beginning stages of work. Also, any assessments that I do, I keep in one folder. It just makes them easy to find. So with Jane Doe, let's say I did a mid-60, I'd keep her answers to her questions and her scores here. And if I did any other standardized assessments or customized assessments, I would keep them here. And then the completed targets folder, it's a little bit jumping the gun, but I'll go there right now, this is where I store all of the target memories that we have fully reprocessed and are put away. And so with this client, we have completed 4 targets on her target list, but I'm getting ahead of myself on that one. So let me just show you what I work with first. So I have a document that is Jane's history document. So this is my form that I use to just take a history. So on that document are going to be goals, symptoms, triggers, a history of the client in terms of where they've been in their life, attachment history, relationship history, anything that I want to add to that, I'll write there about maybe allies, resources, things that are going well in their life in real time. I'll also list there any of the things like standard EMDR things that I'll do, like at the top of the page, I'll make sure I write in what their container is, what their com place is, just so I have an easy place to kind of look at and see everything about Jane's history. And while I am working on this history document, and every single time I work with Jane, I have a target list open, right? And so the target list for Jane, let's say, is a not safe memory network, right? And remember, memory networks are generally self-worth, safety, inappropriate or excessive responsibility, and then powerlessness and control are generally the 4 buckets here. And Jane only has one memory network we're working on. So she only has one target list. And this is her list of target memories in chronological order. And I can just check them off as we work through them, right? And I don't really put the order until we start working through the memories because we may, after a while, end up skipping some of these, right? I always start with the earliest memory and we'll work in chronological order, reprocessing until the client is ready to start skipping to some of the more disturbing memories. And I just check them off the list here. So this is a document that I begin creating the moment I meet a client, and I'm constantly referencing and updating as we go through this work. So that is her target list, and that's why I want it on this main page, not in a folder, because this is something I'm going to open every time we work together, okay? The other thing that I will show you on here is RDI. I like to keep RDI outside of the history document because it can get lost in there. And I really like being able to have it easily accessible so I can reference it if I need it, like for an interweave or just to know what we've done. And so I'll show you what this would look like. So this supposes that we've done RDI only one time working together. We did it on the 21st of April to help with parenting challenges. And these were the elements that we resourced. Incidentally, these things right here, I would copy and share with Jane so that she has access to those resources and can practice them. But say we were to do RDI another day, like today, which is the 17th of October, I would put it here and say we were going to do it around work challenge with new boss, right? And then I would put whatever elements we resourced here. And it's a great way for me always to know what are her resources, like I said, especially if I want to use them as an interweave during reprocessing. So I've learned to separate that out and have a running list of RDI sessions. And then every single target that I reprocess with a client, and those are these completed targets that you see here, I create a separate document for. So I am a firm believer in the power of near verbatim transcripts. I keep a transcript while I'm reprocessing with every single client. I don't use a specific form for it, although there are forms that exist and we offer some in our training for folks. But I personally just use a blank document. This is my phase 3 information here. You can see the target, the image, NCPC, VOC, emotion, SUD, and body sensation. And then I just go through and I'm writing in what the client says. If I return to target, I put it here. If I take a SUD and ask what the worst part is, we keep going. If I use an interweave, which I didn't here, I would write in the interweave. And then when we close out the session at the end of the day, I do closure phase, the client comes back next week, and I just add the new date to the bottom and continue reprocessing until this target is complete. And so I've got all of the memory that on her target list is called top of the stairs, saved as a separate document, right? And so say last week we finished this target, but we haven't done phase 8 on it. So it's going to stay here until the next session. She comes in, we do phase 8, and if it's complete and the memory is no longer disturbing, then I could just drop this over into completed targets, open my target list, and see where we need to go next on the list. So it's a really nice, easy pivot along the way. And then how I know what to do, because I will not remember between sessions, is I leave myself my session notes, right? My session notes are very bare bones because they don't really need to hold a lot of information because I've got my target list, I've got my history document, I've got my RDI and targets, but I leave this as like a little breadcrumbs guiding principle for myself. So we met on the 3rd of March. I began history. We began working on I began working on her target list. I taught the container, and I always like to leave myself a little next up so that future me knows what to do next, right? So on the 10th of March, before I see Jane, I open this document and look and see what happened last week. And I remind myself, I want to remember to explore her attachment relationships more as we continue our history. So the 10th of March, we continued her history. We decided there's a safety memory network we're going to work on. We worked on the mid-60. I taught her BLS and I taught her eye movements. And we also did the complex. And then I give myself a little next up, ask about the complex, and maybe consider giving the client the list of memories homework. She come back in the next week. She's doing well with the complex. I make a decision. There's no need to do RDI at this point. We maybe do it later. We continued the history, began working on the target list together. So now it's becoming collaborative. And we decided that she is going to work on a list of memories between sessions to add to this lack of safety target list. And then I remind myself, next up, future Kara, here's what you want to do. Finish up your target list with her input, whatever she gives me, and then prep her for reprocessing because I think we're ready to start reprocessing. So she comes in, we polish the target list. I prepped her for reprocessing. And just a little reminder. And then we began her first memory, which was the tall boy. It was incomplete. Begin. This is my next stop. Sorry, I must not have written this in here correctly. This actually should say next stop, begin, not began. So today we began the tall boy memory. It was incomplete in session. She did well with reprocessing. And I like to leave myself this note when someone is new, right? Because I will remember, like, how is she in terms of tolerating the work? So she did well with reprocessing, and containment was fairly simple. We did the container complex. And then this is my next step right here, essentially, which is return to target next session on the tall boy because it's incomplete. And so when she came in next week, I completed the tall boy with her, and we had enough time that we began the top of the stairs, right? And so we finished we did not finish the top of the stairs, but we did finish the tall boy. So next week, I'm going to want to do phase 8 on tall boy because we finished it today. So next week I need to do phase 8 on it. And then if that one's still good, we'll return to target on, this is completely wrong, on top of stairs, right? So that's where I would go. I would return to target on the one that we began but didn't finish. And then on the 14th, we complete the top of the stairs and ended session with a discussion about parenting challenges that weren't related to our target list, but we had some time. And so next up, make sure to do phase 8 on the top of the stairs and begin the next target, which is dad's a bully on her list. And also I want to remind myself, because this is in my next step, to ask about how parenting went during the week. Maybe consider now doing RDI to help with the parenting challenges, right? And then we did do RDI around parenting challenges. And we did phase 8 on top of the stairs that we finished last week, right? And it wasn't complete in the end, even though we finished it last week. When we did phase 8, we realized we had to do a little bit more work on it. So we did some more work on this memory, and it's now complete. And so next up, I'll check back in on parenting challenges that we did RDI around and begin the next memory on the list. Because phase 8 showed us that top of the stairs still needed more work. So this is kind of like my little breadcrumbs as I'm moving along. And I always begin a session with it by looking at what happened last week and my little next step. And I always end a session by just quickly jotting a note down. And I really, it's so fast that I don't get behind on my notes because it literally, you saw, like, there's not a lot of information here. It takes me 30 seconds, maybe a minute, if I had to write long, to be able to keep these notes. So that is what a client file looks like. I hope this was helpful to you. Please do reach out if you have any questions. Thanks so much.